Yo, it's your boy Willet the Feral here with our that's right, first time doing Raiders content as Willet the Feral. So we are going to be going over my 53-man roster projection of who I believe is making the team. So what do you think? Is it going to be a good showdown? Is the team going to be feral with who I pick? Or are we just gonna get left out for the Coyotes? Hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned where we start with our quarterbacks.
For the plane knows his name in the cuts of the wind. Half a thief, half a saint, with a fire in his skin. Will it the Pharaoh ride? Will it the Pharaoh ride? Hands to the sky and the dust in your eyes. Will it the Pharaoh ride? Will it the Pharaoh ride? Half outlaw, half song, and he won't bow down.
Willet the Feral here to kick off the Raiders' 53-man roster projection. This is my roster projection following mandatory minicamp. This is taking consideration of what some of our beat writers have reported about whose kind of stock is up, stock is down, and then just, my personal opinion as, someone who played football through school and actually even dabbed in a little bit of coaching, offensive line. Fun times getting ferals, shoving people into the dirt, and then some time at linebacker and tight end as well. Had me a pick six one time. It was and yes, I played offensive defensive line, and yet your boy was athletic and fast enough to get in as a linebacker and pick a quarterback for a pick six, which was beautiful. But anywho, don't want to toot my own horn anymore. Let's go ahead and dive into our Las Vegas Raiders. So I feel like this is pretty much a no-brainer, besides some people would probably have Aiden and Fernando flip-flopped. I personally believe you roll in with Kirk Cousins as your starter, Aiden as the backup, and then you just let Fernando learn behind those two. Unless he really is showing something in practice where you're like, yeah, we need to go with this guy, you just let him learn. Unless the wheels are just falling off the team. I think that's the only way you bring him in. Unless the offensive line's horrible. Then you don't bring him in for no reason. None at all. But this is the route I would go. So we're going to build the 53-man roster position by position. Next up, running backs. All right, Willet the Feral here going over running backs for our Las Vegas Raiders. So, of course, starter Ashton Jeanty and Mike Washington Jr. are going to split carries to keep each other fresh. And then our backup I have is Roman Himby. I did just go ahead and throw in Connor Hayward here because he will be our starting fullback. So that puts us now at our roster count of 7. I love that Roman Himby has ties to Fernando Mendoza, so I think that's going to be a plus in the future. Let's say if he does have a good rapport and he does show he's got the skill, if something happens where we can't if it comes to a point where it's you pay Ashton Jeanty or you pay Mike Washington Jr., let's say they both ball out and you're not able to afford both, then at least you have a Roman Himby kind of waiting in the wings, hopefully. And then that could also assist for when Fernando takes over. But I think Ashton Jeanty and Mike Washington Jr. is going to be a tough, nasty, two-headed monster that I hope we can hold for a while. So, and then with the addition of Connor Hayward as a fullback, giving him a good lead blocker, and then Ashton Jeanty already was at the top, if not the best in yards after contact, and then giving him now a fullback too to lead the way, he's going to be very hard to stop. Next up here, we discuss our wide receivers, y'all. So this had a bit of a shakeup between my first one and last one. I think I actually kept less wide receivers here And based off some of the reports of OTAs, though, my order of them a little bit changed. So I'm pretty sure what stayed the same was Jalen Naylor, Trey Tucker, the first two. Dante Thornton Jr. He jumped up there. I would still keep Jack Besh. I don't know though. From what I'm hearing, he's struggling. So right now, I would have him bottom of the roster. And I would give Malik Benson a chance. I'm hearing some really good things about Malik, so I most likely would actually squeeze Jack Besh in here, but for the sake of the video, I did leave him off. But I would actually probably throw him at 11 now that I'm thinking about it. And I would have 6 wide receivers, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to go ahead and leave it the same. Dante Thornton Jr. sounds like he's actually got some positive. He's actually been getting some positive comments from the beat reporters, so sounds like he's actually doing well. But then we heard that when he got drafted, and then it was a dead year. So I'm going to take that with a grain of salt a little bit, but I'm putting him at 3. Malik Benson is the 4th wide receiver, and then Drake Young makes it because of his special team ability as well. I would actually probably sneak in Jack Besh, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is. We'll do a final after preseason. He'll likely be on this list, but for the sake of conversation, that's the 5 I'm rolling with for sure. Next up, tight ends. Willet the Feral here. We're now covering our tight ends of our Las Vegas Raiders. So I think this is no shock here. Brock Bowers is the starter. If we do 2 tight end sets, you'll see Bowers and Michael Mayer, and then sprinkle in Ian Thomas from time to time. He did sign a new deal this offseason, so I see Ian Thomas making the team, and seems pretty reliable as a 3rd backup option. He had some pretty decent catches last year, so this was quite the change from my first projection, because I think I was keeping Patrick Gurr to be a backup fullback, but we could do better things with that roster spot, so I did not include him this time. I'm specifically sticking to the top 3 so we can beef up some other areas. So next up, offensive line, my specialty. All right, here we are with our big uglies on the offensive line. This is going to be key to our season this year, and I feel like I assembled this order based on what I'm hearing out of our minicamp, plus who kind of my favorites are, and basically where they best will help the team. This could always change, especially Trey Zune's kind of that wild card that could play multiple positions, and same for Powers Johnson. So if things get a little weird or people get injured, this can definitely shake up, just because of their a lot of their ability to be versatile. So we start with Colton Miller, obviously starter at left tackle. I have him backed up by Charles Grant. I think he eventually becomes a starter when Colton Miller's ready to hang up the boots. I don't believe I had Spencer Buford as the starter originally in my first projection, but he's been getting all first team reps. So I feel he will be leading in as the starter. I have Trey Zune the 3rd as his backup. Of course, Tyler Linderbaum is our starter. I don't like the idea of Jordan Meredith at center. He was way better at guard, but the guard position's pretty stacked, so I think that's where they put him in. But I feel like that can always change, where if you don't trust him, you put Powers Johnson, and then you squeeze Meredith back to guard. But again, with the versatility, this can change, but I feel like this is their way of kind of keeping him on, even though I would be scared if he's coming in as center. I feel like he was a turnstile last year and just letting people get after the quarterback, so I don't want that. I would keep him for how he did at guard. Powers Johnson, love the guy. I hope he stays healthy. I have him penciled in as the right guard starter, backed up by Caleb Rogers, who I think eventually too could possibly start. Let's say if Jackson Powers Johnson, ends up taking over for Tyler Linderbaum, if he hangs it up in the future and Powers Johnson's still on, I think, you could see that shift where you have Powers Johnson as your starting center. You have, it'll be a really young line, but that have worked together for a while. You can have Charles Grant take over for Colin Miller, Trey Zune take over for Buford, Powers Johnson take over for Linderbaum, and then Caleb Rogers as your starter, and then with a young DJ Glaze, that is a young but already experienced line that is used to being in battle together, which, if they all work out the way they can, you can't beat that. That you have a solid line that's had continuous reps together for a long time, and they're young, so they'll have it for a long time. I would love that. I don't know if it'll happen. That's like best case scenario possible. All right, next up would be, let's do defensive line. All right, next up, our defensive line, and I went ahead and included linebackers together because they're going to play a big role in helping this defensive line. So this is quite the change. We are switching to a 3-4 base defense. So basically, the lineup is going to be a lot different the way they line up, right? So we're going to go over some of these terms just in case they are new. Sorry, give me 1 second. So, of course, we're going to have Adam Butler. I believe he starts. He's been definitely a positive defensive tackle for us. However, he's going to be in the nose tackle position, which is basically the defensive tackle position in a 3-4 defense. They position directly in front of the offensive tackle usually. They are the primary run stopper. So usually you want someone that is on the larger side, can break blocks and stuff the run. And then he'll be our starter. And from what I'm hearing, even though I haven't really heard about him practicing or if he has yet at all, I'm hearing Benito Jones is the it sounds like he has a good shot of being our backup nose tackle. So this is where things get a little messy. Yes, Crosby's played defensive end, but the way 3-4 works is things can be a little different. So bear with me here as I explain this. So Thomas Booker is going to be considered our left defensive end, right? And you do this because it allows you to have different fronts and really mess with the offense. So Crosby's going to be on the field. Don't worry. There's a method to the madness with 3-4, okay? So Thomas Booker will be the left defensive end starter, and he will be backed up by Brandon Cleveland. This was put together, of course, by news out of minicamp, and then my personal opinion as well. For right defensive end, you're going to have Jonah Lalulu. I don't even know if that's spelled correctly. If it's not, I apologize, but I believe it is. I don't know why I don't look right now that it's on camera, but Jonah Lalulu, I believe he's the starter, and then backed up by Tonka Hemingway. Mr. Max Crosby, so he's going to be playing when in 3-4, what we call a weak side linebacker. So they play on the opposite side of where the offensive tackle and nose tackle are. So you're covering the weak side of the field. You're usually aligned near the offensive line, and so he's going to basically be kind of back behind the defensive end, kind of in that area. So, but on the opposite side of where the nose tackle is going to be lined up. So he's not expected to do much covering. It's more of, he's covering that area, but he's more of a up to the line, waiting to get the runner or go after the quarterback. So he's not going to be directly, like, he can put his hand in the dirt and rush. It happens. But he's kind of going to be more of like a read and react, and it's going to be deadly because with his motor. And then his backup, of course, is Ron Crawford. Nakobe Dean will be our, what we call, left side linebacker, a left inside in this case. They line up on the left side of the field, but on the inside of the weak side linebacker. So Crosby's going to be a little further out, and then Nakobe Dean would kind of be more in the middle-ish, sort of. Yeah, so he'll be in the inside of the weak side linebacker. So, and is considered the left inside linebacker. So you'll see Nakobe Dean there. He's going to most likely, in my opinion, he's more kind of there for coverage of like tight ends and such. And then Crosby's more set to like rush, which is what you want. So don't panic. And then he'll be, sounds like Segun Alobi. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I have him penciled in as the backup to Nakobe Dean. And then Kwity Paye is going to be our starter at what we call the strong side linebacker in a 3-4. They're playing on the same side of the field as the offensive tackle and our nose tackle, which will be Adam Butler in this case. They are often the primary pass rusher and also coverage linebacker. So from what I understand, weak side is more just you're rushing. You're reacting to the running back and you're rushing. Strong side can be either way. So definitely gives, and of course it just depends on how they scheme it up, because they're going to probably scheme different times where, hey, you're rushing, you're covering, and you just have all these weird fronts and you can get crazy with it. So I have Kwity Paye as a starter. I'm putting Malcolm Kuntz as the backup, even though I've made it pretty known I feel like that I am not a believer in Malcolm Kuntz. He seems to have a good couple games, or he gets injured most of the season. He comes back, has a good couple games, makes the team believe in him, and then he has a bad season to start or gets injured, and then he has a good couple games, and they hold on to him, and they're paying way too much for him, in my opinion. Okay, next up, our secondary. Alright, your boy Willet the Feral here. We're now talking about our secondary on the Las Vegas Raiders and my projection. So, of course, I'm going to start with left cornerback Eric Stokes. He will be our starter, and I have him backed up by Hezekiah Masses, which was a big change from my first projection. I didn't even have him making the roster. So, definitely a lot of positives about him so far. So I think he gets in there. Darian Porter will remain our starter, but at right cornerback with Jermon McCoy backing him up, who can honestly, I think, even end up maybe stealing that starting role from Darian, but we'll see how it goes. If he earns it, hey, no problem. Iron sharpens iron. And then at our nickelback position, which is basically a fancy term for slot corner, Teron Johnson will get the nod as starter, backed up by Traden Stukes. That is a strong nickelback room, which I love. Jeremy Chin remains our starter at strong safety, and then back up with Dalton Johnson, who I also didn't originally have on the roster and trying to hide away on the practice squad, but he's been getting a lot of positive nods as well, so definitely caused this to turn around differently. And then I have Isaiah Palomalo remaining the full safety starter, but backed up by Kristen McCollum, who's actually been getting some positive words from camp as well. So pretty young secondary for the most part, but very talented. On paper, this could be a good unit. We'll see what happens. Next, on to special teams to round out the 53-man roster. Lastly, to round out our 53-man roster is our special teams unit. So I actually end up keeping both kickers. Matt Gay as the starter, Kensai Matsuzawa. Actually, put a Q. I am so sorry. But Matsuzawa, the what do they call him? Tokyo Toe. I feel like he has potential. He's one of those guys you can store at the bottom end of the roster, and he's been a hard worker. He's worked from the bottom up. I like the story. I think it's good for the team having like a high character individual like that. They could possibly end up making it. At some point. Matt Gay's not a young chicken anymore. He's not a spring chicken. So that could be the future starter for us. And then we have AJ Cole. He'll be our punter and the holder for Matt Gay. I have Derek Young. This is where there's some differing opinions. They had Trey Tucker. There's a lot of people thinking Trey Tucker would be involved in kick return and punt return. I personally wouldn't put one of our offensive starters out there. They had him, I believe, as the starting kick returner and then like backup punt returner. I am not doing that. That is why you brought on Derek Young. I would have him be the kick and punt return starter, and then this is where we use Jonathan Brady. That also provides us wide receiver depth if we need it, but we sneak him on as the kick return and punt return backup. And then we have Alex Ward, our starting long snapper. And then we do actually get a +1 because we do have an international pathway player, Laki Tassi, who is set as a defensive tackle. He was playing offensive line primarily last year. He switched from defensive line to offensive line for the NFL, but now they're moving him back to defensive line because he is a huge body that hopefully, he can actually, I feel like with his size, good luck. So hopefully he's learning from, Adam Butler and the Max Crosbys and just becoming the beast that his frame could allow him to be. So that is our 53-man roster plus our 1 extra for the international pathway. It does not allow us one more roster spot. It allows us to keep the international pathway player Laki Tassi without breaking the roster count rules. So you technically have 54 spots, but it has to be that individual. You can't sneak on like someone you don't want to get rid of because you have an international pathway player. You have room to carry that player, and he doesn't count towards your 53. So it does. So basically, you get an extra in that international pathway player, but and you hope that they become a full timer, but then they kind of get taken off as that extra player, and they become a full time. So NFL player. So then it's cool to have, but it's not like a huge advantage. You hope they ball out into something, and then you've got them, groomed up for your team. But anywho, let me know what you think in the comments of my 53-man roster projection. Grade it, A, B, C, D, F. I feel like it's solid. I would give it. I would give this an A. I really cut through the fluff on this one, and my first roster projection I feel like was more with my heart, because I liked certain individuals, but this time I really went in on who is the best fit, best for the team, provides the best depth, best versatility, really hammering out, putting together a solid roster. So let me know what you think. Grade the move. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. After preseason, we'll see if this projection sticks around the same. Remember 2 things. Stay feral, and if there's a Willet, there's a way.